Let's call this meeting to order. We're on tape. Let's go around and identify ourselves for the record.
Bryant Robbins, Municipal Assessor.
Patrick Flynn. Bill Evans.
Tim Steve.
Pete Peterson.
Dick Training. We've got more people coming.
I think Ms. Johnston is coming.
We'll turn the time over to you guys.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to provide this update on the 2015 property tax base. Before I get started, I'd like to let my team introduce themselves. John, why don't you start?
John Dyson, Residential Supervisor.
I'm Janet Simpson, and I'm Supervisor of Personal Property and Customer Service Groups.
Welcome to the meeting. Thanks for being here. And then joined by Jennifer Johnson.
I'm Kelly Lewis, the Deputy Director.
And
John Wedlick, the Chief Appraiser.
okay. This first slide provides a really high-level overview of the assessment process. All taxable property is assessed as of January 1st of each year. On January 15th, assessment notices are mailed and the values go live on the web. This marks the beginning of the 30-day appeal period. February 13th will end the appeal period this year, and March 2nd is the last day to submit evidence in support of appeals. In mid-March, we'll begin Board of Equalization hearings, and by June 1st, all appeals must be substantially completed. In June, we start the cycle over again. We begin our evaluation duties, and September through December, we go out and inspect all new construction that has occurred in that year, and then add that to the tax roll. And we're working year-round to meet the requirement to re-inspect every property within the municipality at least once every 6 years. The property tax base is comprised of three main components: real property, residential real property, commercial real property, and personal property. This map shows where the taxable real property is located within the municipality. It's in the purple shaded areas. Most of the land within the municipality is exempt and owned by either the state or the federal government, so it's not taxable. Looking in a little more detail at the property tax base, the left bar is just the total tax base, again divided into the three main components. The right bar is the residential properties, and they're divided into single-family, duplex, triplex, and condos. You can see that single family makes up by far the largest portion of the residential properties, and it's also interesting that it makes up more than 50% of the entire property tax base. Here we have the commercial.
Johnson has a question, sir.
Your other residential, is that your large complexes, your large residential complexes?
No, those are valued as commercial properties. What would it be, like cabins and that sort of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. So just some strange property types that don't fit into the main category.
Mobile home.
In the commercial properties, the four largest types of property are retail, office, industrial, and apartments. 2015 marks the centennial year for Anchorage, so we thought it might be interesting to take a quick look back at how some things have changed. In 1915, the Alaska Engineering Commission auctioned off 655 lots. Those were valued with a total value of $150,000, and that marked the beginning of Anchorage. Today we have more than 96,000 parcels, and those have a total valuation of more than $35 billion. This chart shows how the population has changed over the years, and you can see that beginning in the 1950s we've had pretty steady increases in population decade over decade. This is contrasted with our increases in home construction. This chart shows current housing units by year of construction. And I don't think you can look at this chart without noticing the huge spike in construction that occurred in the early 80s. You're naturally drawn to that. I'd like to make a couple of points. given what's going on in the oil market, I know I hear a lot of conversations about, people have concerns about their property values, what's going to happen to my property value as a result of changes in the oil market. I think this chart makes an important point. There's not much comparison between our current market and what was going on in the 80s. There's not much house flipping going on. There's very little speculative purchasing. There's not a residential housing boom going on. We're not doing a lot of speculative construction. When you compare the last few years to the construction in the 80s, there really is no comparison. Another point is that it's really easy for us to forget that in pretty recent times we've seen some really low oil prices and we didn't experience property value decreases. This chart shows the price of oil since 2001. That's the jagged blue line, and it compares it with total assessed value over that period, and that's the red line. If you remember, in 2001 we saw oil prices at $15 a barrel. And again in 2008 oil dropped to $26 a barrel from a high of $145. Throughout this entire period we continued to see property appreciation, or at very worst it held steady. So yeah, the price of oil is concerning, but it's not time to push the panic button in the real estate market just yet. Moving into the present, I think if there's a theme to the real estate market over the last year, it is that it just continued chugging along. We saw appreciation rates similar to what we saw last year. We didn't, as I mentioned, we didn't see any sign of frothing or overheating. Looking at our local market compared to the national market since 2007, this chart shows the Case-Shiller index in the green line compared to changes in acreage assessed values over that period. You can see that our local market held up very well through the downturn, and compared to the national market, which dove pretty significantly and still hadn't recovered to where it was pre-crash. Also, you can see that over the last couple of years, our market has started appreciating at a somewhat more rapid rate. This is the same chart, but we've put in interest rates during that same period. The purple line is interest rates, and the right axis shows the corresponding interest rates. So interest rates during that period continued to drop until about 2012, when they ticked up slightly, 2012 through 2013. And then in 2014, we started seeing a downward trend again. So obviously the historically low interest rates are helping support markets, not just here, but around the country. This chart is a similar chart for commercial properties, comparing the local market to the national market, and the story is essentially the same. Commercial property held its value during the downturn in the lower 48, and in the last couple of years we've seen property values appreciate again. Looking at the change from last year in the property tax base, we increased value by 4.1%, including new construction this year. The property tax base is now valued at $38 billion. And we'll take a look at each of the three segments in a little more detail, beginning with the residential market, or the residential properties. Residential property increased by 4.3%. This includes new construction, and is now valued at $24.65 billion. If you look at only changes to existing properties, in other words, excluding new construction, the increase was 3.5% on average, and single-family residence increased on average 3.6%.
Ms. Johnson.
The vacant land, that's municipal-wide, right? All of these are municipal-wide?
Yeah, these are all municipal-wide.
They were broken down?
Yeah, I'll break, actually, I'm glad you asked.
Great.
This shows what we call residential market clusters. These are groups of the way we group properties for valuation purposes. The top group is our geographic clusters. In other words, those are parts of town. And the bottom group are what we call global clusters. Those are types of properties, custom homes, townhouses, for example, that can be found anywhere in the municipality, but we we value them as a type. Obviously, one cluster that stands out is Cluster 1, downtown. Patrick?
Again, didn't you?
This is a very desirable part of town, and our data indicates that it's been appreciating at a more rapid rate than the rest of the municipality. The most recent data we have indicates that our values had lagged the market over the last couple of years. So in Cluster 1, part of this increase is market increase, and part of it is to catch up to the market to bring Cluster 1 back in equity with the rest of the municipality. Sorry. Another interesting cluster is Cluster 9. That's the custom homes, higher-end homes. There was a small increase in the number of sales of that type of property this year, but it's still lagging the rest of the market as far as appreciation rates. This chart shows the number of sales over the last 3 years for duplexes, condominium, and single-family residences. You can see we saw a pretty significant increase in the number of sales 2012 to 2013, and then we've held steady at about 3,000 sales in 2014 for single-family residences. We also track listings, and as of the end of the year, we were tracking 1,358 listings. Of those listings, we had an assessed value to list price ratio of 94%. Of the 3,050 sales that I mentioned on the last slide, 903 of those were disclosed to the municipality. And of that 903, we had a 96% assessed value to sale price ratio.
Mr. Flynn, sir.
On the sales disclosed to MOA, is that the people who actually completed the form, or is that also sales for which you got data from appraisals that included comps that you hadn't got the form from?
Exactly. That's from all sources.
Okay.
Any other questions? We were joined by Mr. Dombrowski. The minutes reflected. Go ahead, sir. Please continue.
This is another metric that people find interesting. It is the average assessed value compared to the average MLS sale price. It can be a little bit like comparing apples to oranges, but assuming that the mix of properties sold in the MLS in any given year is a representative mix of the properties in the community, it has some relevance. This year, the average assessed value is $343,900, and the MLS average sale price was $360,000 for a ratio of 95%. And that's 1% less than the disclosed sale price ratios. Taking a look at commercial properties, the overall change in value was 4.1%, and commercial property is now valued at $10.17 billion. Changes to existing properties were on average 2.8%, so that indicates that we had a considerable amount of new construction in commercial this year, and I'll talk in more detail about that in a few minutes. Apartments were one of the bigger increases, and I think it's the same story as we had last year. We've got a fairly static supply of apartments and a robust demand for housing, so that's driving that a little bit faster than the overall rate. Hotels also were just continuing to improve from the downturn in 2009. Full-service hotels in particular increased in value, and that was a function of their expense ratios just continuing to improve. We had 106 sales of commercial properties excluding fourplexes, and of those 24 were disclosed to us, and of the 24 there was a 94% assessed value to sale price ratio. Obviously we don't get a lot of information about commercial sales. 77 fourplex sales, only 14 were disclosed, and we had a 94% AV ratio of those as well. We Since we don't get a lot of information about commercial sales, we spend a lot of time looking at cost indexes and income information, cap rates, that sort of thing. So. Looking at personal property. Personal property is assessed in July and October of each year, so we haven't actually assessed the personal property for 2015. So this comparison is between 2014 and 2013. The overall change was 3.9%, and personal property is valued at $3 billion. This is a graph of total personal property value since 2007. You can see the trend is generally upward. And this chart shows the makeup of those accounts. We value both mobile homes and active business personal property as personal property. And when you look at this chart of the number of accounts, mobile homes make up a significant portion of the total tax roll. But when you look at mobile homes as a percent of the value contributed to the total personal property tax roll, it's only 3%. As I mentioned, this was a good year for new construction. In fact, it's the best year we've had since 2009. Both residential and commercial new construction increased. This chart shows the breakout, residential, commercial, and total. And looking more closely at it, residential properties, we had $198 million in new construction, an 11% increase over the previous year. Commercial was $131 million, a 19% increase over last year. Total was $329, 14% increase overall. As we know, not all property is taxed within the municipality, and we've been tracking this exemption that was mandated by the state over the years. The senior and disabled veteran, senior citizens and disabled veteran exemptions were mandated in 1983. And for the first few years, the state reimbursed the municipalities for some portion of the cost of these exemptions. That ended in 1996. And since then, the cost of the exemptions has continued to increase. This year, the exemption represents about $30 million in taxes shifted. If you look at that as a percent of the total tax, property tax roll, that represents about 6% of the total property tax roll that's shifted to other taxpayers to fund that exemption. We're about to enter our appeal and review period, and this slide sort of fits the way we feel this time of year.
You have one question. Are you going back to your last slide? For the senior citizen disabled veterans, have you looked at the amount of property that's being taken away from our city's ability to tax and go to churches? Because the state changed it a while back and increased.
Yes. I don't have that number, but I could get it.
If you would just get it for me.
Okay.
Because I know the state changed how they did it. And I think there's probably been an increase in the amount of.
I think you're right. I think you're talking about the residences associated with churches.
Yep.
Okay, we can get that.
If you would, please. Thank you. Sorry to bother you.
No problem. Anyway, we're moving into our appeal period. And a few things that, I'm sorry. Over the last few years, our appeals have been actually very low. This chart shows appeal levels since 2004. It includes direct contacts, which would be phone calls or people coming in to the counter and talking to us. Informal reviews, which are changes in value that didn't require a formal appeal. Many issues can be resolved without the need for a formal appeal. And then it also includes appeals. I think part of the reason that the appeals have remained low over the last few years is that we've seen pretty stable market values. People aren't as likely to file an appeal if their values aren't changing significantly. Another reason is the success of the website. People have gotten comfortable with going to the website, and this chart shows the number of hits for our website. I think people have gotten comfortable with the website over the years. They can go to the site and look at their value. They can look at their neighbor's value. They can get some sense of comfort that They're not being unequally assessed. They can also look at what we call the profile of their property, which is square footage, number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms, that sort of thing. And they can make sure that we are assessing what they actually own and not assessing twice the size house that they actually own. They can also look at sales of similar properties, get a sense of what that says about their value. So I think that's a part of the reason that that the appeals are low. People may not like it, but in the end, if they feel that they're not being unfairly treated, they're going to be less likely to appeal. But if you do have an issue, a few things to remember. As I said, the appeal period is January 15th through February 13th. Appeals can be filed at any time, and as long as they're postmarked by February 13th, they'll be accepted. A refundable appeal deposit is required as long as the citizen cooperates with the process and attends the appeal hearing. The deposit will be refunded. The deposits are also refunded if the appeal is withdrawn. Only the owner of record as of January 1st has the right to appeal. So if someone purchases a house on January 2nd, they would need to get a letter of authorization from the owner of record on January 1st to file the appeal. And as I mentioned, many issues can be resolved without the need for a formal appeal. And we really encourage people to come talk to us before they file the appeal. It's a lot less, it's a lot easier process if they just come talk to us, and sometimes they don't even have to fill out any paperwork. They just give us whatever evidence they have, and we take care of the issue. If you do need to talk to us, the best time to come in is in the first 2 weeks of the review period. Our volume's fairly low during that time, and it gives us plenty of time to resolve more complex issues. By the third week, our volume starts picking up, and it's harder to resolve those complex issues. And by the fourth week, if you have something that's pretty complicated, you're probably going to need to file an appeal just to preserve your rights. We'll still do our best to resolve every issue before the end of the 30-day period, but if it looks like we can't get to it, it's best to file the appeal to preserve the appeal rights. And if you need to contact us, our appeal phone line is here, and our web address is muni.org/PA.
Thank you. We may have a few questions. Mr. Flynn, I'll start with you, sir.
Nothing now.
Mr. Johnston? Mr. Evans? Mr. Steele?
I have just a comment. It always, I guess, amazes me in some respects that the amount of tax load that residential properties carry. And I know there's a lot of logic for how you've done it, the personal property, the commercial property. The exemptions are a bit of an issue, but residential property owners carry a huge load in the city. So I'd like to look for some ways to help them. I don't know if it's spread the tax base, you know, that's kind of brought up every few years and never seems to work in terms of alternative taxes, and spend less. Spend less.
I was going to say that. You stole my thunder.
That's right. They can always cut our salary.
Get more revenue sharing from the
much
state.
either. Huh?
Get more revenue sharing from the state.
Well, we don't get, you know, we don't get money from the state, and this is,
Maybe
you
give
know,
the school district a little less.
we get a little money from the feds, but
We have no control over that.
we have no control. We have a new senator, we can complain to him. Maybe we'll do something. Anyway, just a comment, observation.
Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was looking at the slide on page 40 about the appeals, and looking at, you know, the downward trend of the number of appeals. Did we lower the cost of filing an appeal somewhere, or raise the cost, and did that have an effect on the number of people who appealed?
Fair enough.
Yeah.
We had a dramatic effect in 2004 when
We lowered
we
it.
instituted
Big
that.
time.
There was no fee to file before. And that's the reason you had that high amount. Once we, and people didn't like it, but once we instituted a fee to it, the way we've got it structured, as long as you participate, or if it's upheld, you get your money back. It's $100. It's been very successful. When you look at that one chart right there, watch it run down. I think you guys do a great job. Everybody I've talked to, they love the response they've done.
Yeah.
Men like their taxes, but they like their
Well,
response.
thank you. It just cuts down on the frivolous appeals where somebody is just clogging up the process. I just
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mr. Dombrowski,
I do have something that it's been on my list for a while, though I haven't
you
come
want to
in.
have your house reassessed?
No. Mine's fine. But I have a resident in my neighborhood who has appealed multiple times, and he's won multiple times. And he has to keep going out and spending $600 on an appraisal because year over year, I mean, it might be 6 months between, but they're like, well, that we can't really, that appraisal's good for 3 years, but we can't really rely on it this year. So to me, that seems like, I don't know what the policy is, but it was something that I talked to the department last year, and they had a logical rationale, and I think you probably remember it coming up, but I wasn't satisfied with it. So I think it's something that I'm going to come back to you and have you walk me through it again and just talk about it, and I'll give you the specific parcel so we can have an educated discussion on it. But it's something that,
Yeah, I'd like to talk about it. I'm not sure exactly which parcel we're talking about, but I'm aware that in the past there has been some of that, and I've given direction to the staff that if we made an adjustment in the previous year and we believed that it was correct then, and there are no factual changes in the situation, then the only change, especially if the evidence is only 1 year old,
exactly.
that the only change in value should be the market change in value from that beginning point, not going all the way back up to where it was. Some properties are unique and they're difficult to value, and they're difficult to value in a
this
massive.
particular one's not.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is when you just went in an appeal and then your property goes up $90,000 and there's really been no changes. And he appealed it and he won again. But I expect probably in about 3 weeks I'll probably get another phone call from him. He's gone through this for like 6 years.
Okay, I'd like to talk about that one because it is something I'm looking at.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thanks.
Yes, Mr. Flynn.
Thank you. A couple quick things. First, when the new appraisals going to be posted online? Is it already up or?
January 15th.
On the 15th, okay. And for the website, were the data unique hits? I mean, I hit that property tax evaluation thing at least weekly for various constituent things, but it's always the same IP address. So is every time I go to that being registered, or is it just once for me?
Jerry, do you know?
When you go into it, when you go into our site and you hit our property appraisal site, that's what's counted.
It's unique
And
every time.
when you're in it and running and doing different things, it only counted once when you opened it.
Okay, so I'm responsible for a pretty significant percentage. And the final question, you mentioned the federal land that's not taxable, and I know in some jurisdictions there's
And low taxes.
In lieu of
Yeah,
taxes.
and then we have Delta.
Yeah. Does the Chugach National Forest fall under that?
No.
And the only ones I'm aware of is those in the downtown area do pay the special assessment for the downtown improvement district, but they don't pay regular property tax.
That's correct.
And don't we, but we do get help for the national forest,
Well,
right? From the bases.
Well, for
Bases.
private interest on federal land are taxable. So
The Burger King on J Bear pays a tax.
yeah, if you have a lease on federal land or state land or municipal land, then we assess that as it's called a possessory interest. So those are taxed. All the private interest out at the airport are taxed. Merrifield, those leases are taxed. And then base housing pays a PILT, a payment in lieu of taxes as well. But it has to be a private interest on the otherwise exempt property.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Flynn?
light community.
Just, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Does the Alaska Railroad pay property taxes to Anchorage?
No, they don't, but once again,
The leaseholders.
the leaseholders do, yes.
Anything else from Bonnie? Nothing else, thank you very much for this. And to Assembly members, we do have a legislative ability this weekend to talk to our legislators. At the Assembly chambers from 9 to 12, or 9 to 2, we're going to be having a meeting, so if you want to talk to your legislator, go to Juneau. Give them a chance to do it. It's over, thank you.